Eamon Ryan, 30 seconds.
Minister, I welcome the fact that we raised some $3 billion in a green bond issue just in the autumn, and it's about 12-year money at 1.2, 1.3%. But we need to scale that up massively. Our existing national development plan will only bring us 1/3 of the way at most towards the climate target we have for 2030. There's a huge investment task for this country. I believe green bonds could help finance it. I'm keen to see what your plans are in that regard.
Thank you, Deputy, and thank you for acknowledging the success of this initiative. I do appreciate that. As you said yourself, it did raise €3 billion. The bond, which matures in 2031, was sold at an initial yield of 1.399%. And this follows on from a decision that the government made last July. This transaction was a further move by the NTMA to diversify its issuance, access a new category of investor and provide a new debt instrument to meet untapped investor demand. The accessing of these investors is important given the increased focus of investors on funds on environmentally sustainable investments. It's important that Ireland is one of the first sovereigns to meet this demand. An allocation report will be made available to investors annually until an amount equal to the net proceeds of the Irish sovereign green bond has been fully allocated. The allocation report will include the following details: the total amount allocated to eligible green projects, the total amount allocated per category, and the remaining unallocated amount. In addition to this, an eligible green project impact report will be made available to investors on the environmental impacts of the environmental green projects on at least a biannual basis, subject to the availability of data. Potential projects this could include is where we are on sustainable waste and wastewater management projects and where we are on clean transportation. In a direct answer, Deputy, to the final question that you put to me, yes, I am open at looking at how we can continue this approach in the future. I'll depend on the advice of the NTMA in relation to this, but I think it's fair to say the initial offering of this bond, as I said a moment ago, was very successful. And I'm sure the NTMA and I will want to look at ways in which we can continue this activity in the coming years.
Can I suggest some ways we could raise those bonds and use them to invest in very long-term projects that would give a real return? Yesterday I raised the Minister of Transport the possibility of a metro loop on the south side of Dublin, rather than stopping the underground at Charlemont Street or Ranelagh, to extend to Ternier, Temple Oak, Tala in the southwest, loop around via Sandyford, UCD back into town. Now that sounds grandiose, but that's what we need on the south side of Dublin to make public transport work. All the public transport projects in the current plan, the NTA have sent me a letter saying they will still see a 30% increase in transport emissions in Dublin between 2040, I think. So we need to think bigger and more. Metro is just the sort of project Green Bond could help finance. Secondly, we need to go offshore and develop massive offshore wind resources. A lot of that will be done by the private sector to auctions, but we should own the grid and the transmission grid to ship that power to the rest of Europe, because we have a comparative advantage, is a real opportunity. That's the sort of funding, long-term regulated transmission assets that green bonds are perfectly fit for. Each of those are probably at least a $5 billion plus project. So there are two examples. I might come back with two more if I can, as examples of the way we should be thinking about investing, which goes way beyond what's in the current National Development Plan.
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. The answer that I gave to you there a moment ago, I hope indicated the fact that we are open to using the issuing of bonds like this to fund infrastructural activity that meets the need for either clean transport or green energy. What I would be concerned to do, and this won't surprise you, Deputy, is I am concerned to get into a space of where we might specify formally that any form of borrowing or any form of tax revenue has to be directly linked into specific projects. But I think the green bond and the way we have structured that has really pushed the envelope and the framework for doing it. And it's clear there's an investor demand for it. In relation to further investment in capital for transport projects. I think we are at a point, though, that as you look at where we are with capital investment for this year, it's increasing by nearly 24% versus last year. It's an increase of €1.4 billion. And we do need to be careful that if we are looking to make further very, very significant increases in the future, we not only look at how that will be funded and how we might borrow from it, but we have to look at how we have the capacity to actually do the work.
I'm disappointed in you because you can't retreat back into the, oh, we can't hypothecate. Green bonds do hypothecate. It has to go towards sustainable investments. And I believe the market for that bonds are looking for just the type of projects I'm talking about. I remember Andrew McDowell coming here a couple of years ago saying, crying out to lend long-term money to the country, but there's no counterparties. We can provide the counterparties with specific projects. I'll give you two more examples. I was on prime time the other night debating with Deputy Healy Ray retrofitting. I mentioned the fact that on private homes alone, we're probably looking at a €50 billion investment to make our home, to get rid of fossil fuels heating systems. We need to go further in our public buildings, in our social housing. It's a massive multi-billion euro investment. The savings from the fuel cost reduced can help cover if it's a long-term loan. That's what the markets want. They want that type of hypothecation to know that they've got the future income stream to cover it. Similarly in forestry, we need to move towards a massive level of forestation, of continuous cover forestry. The difficulty is it's a 50, 80, 100-year project, but there is an income stream as the forest grows from the thinnings. That again has got a real value, and the market can put a price on that that can give the confidence for them. If the confidence around those big capital long-term projects is there, they can provide the low-cost funding. You have to hypothecate to make that happen.
Well,
think big and think long-term, Minister.
Well, thank God, Deputy, you're nowhere near the standards of Deputy McGrath, who, when I make this comment, I mean Deputy Matthew McGrath, as opposed to Deputy Michael McGrath. Deputy Matthew McGrath already decides what his answer is going to be before I've even given my own answer to him. If you look at what I said to you there, Deputy, I said to you that the whole essence of a green bond is to say these are the forms of projects that we want to go ahead with. And I have said these are some of the kinds of projects that I think a green bond would be able to fund. And we have said then how we would explain back to investors how their money is being used for clean transport, for environmental projects and so on. My only area of difference with you on this, I think we should be very careful to say we're going to issue a bond and here is the specific project that bond is going to fund. I think we need to be careful about doing that because we have already seen and we're well aware of the challenges that we can sometimes reach in relation to the funding of very, very, very specific projects and delays that can happen in relation to them. I think what the NTMA and the government have done is more sensible, where we lay out broad indicators regarding what are the kinds of projects we would like a green bond to fund without being specific about the projects themselves. And of course then when we go to issue another green bond in the future, we'll have to show that we've made this work, which of course, Deputy, is a different form of market discipline. And I imagine it's a form of market discipline that you'd approve of.
We move on now to other questions.
Briefly.
The first is...
If I can,
you had two supplementaries.
Okay.
Sorry.